In the spring of 1973, a white Pontiac Trans Am pulled up to the starting line at Orange County International Raceway and ran a 13.75 second quarter mile at 103 miles per hour. That same year, the fastest Ford Mustang needed over 16 seconds to cover the same stretch. The Corvette's biggest engine made 275 horsepower. The Hemi had been gone for 2 years. And then Car and Driver ran their review and called it the car that could not happen. How it got past General Motors' own boardroom, they wrote, is a mystery. They had no idea how right they were. How does a factory race engine survive inside a company that has just ordered every V8 in its lineup strangled? The answer starts 3 years earlier, inside a Pontiac engineering shop that was not supposed to exist. By 1971, the muscle car market was falling apart from 3 wounds at once. The Clean Air Act of 1970 forced smog cuts that meant leaner fuel mixes and bolt-on hardware on every engine sold in America. General Motors President Ed Cole declared that all 1971 General Motors engines would drop their compression ratios to run on low-lead fuel, getting ready for the catalytic converters coming in 1975. That single memo from the 14th floor of General Motors headquarters in Detroit wiped out the Chevrolet LS6 454 and Pontiac's own Ram Air 4 overnight. Insurance companies rolled out new rating rules that punished anything with a performance engine. A 1970 Chevelle Supersport cost roughly 3 times as much to insure as a Toyota Corolla sitting on the same lot. The sales drop was brutal. GTO production fell from a peak of 96,946 cars in 1966 to just 10,532 by 1971. The 426 Hemi, the 446 Pack, the Boss 429, the LS6, and the Ram Air 4 were all gone by the end of 1972. And that same year, a 174-day United Auto Workers strike at the Norwood Assembly Plant drove Pontiac Firebird production down to just 1,286 cars total. General Motors bosses were drawing up the papers to cancel the Firebird and Camaro for good. Into that graveyard walked a Pontiac engineer named Herb Adams with a plan to build one more high-performance V8. Pontiac's Special Projects Group had a boring name on purpose. On paper, it was a basic engineering team buried in the company chart. In real life, it was the division's underground racing and performance shop, allowed to exist because General Motors' 1963 company-wide ban on factory racing made cover stories a must. Adams ran the whole thing. He was a General Motors Institute-trained engineer who had worked his way into John DeLorean's inner circle at the General Motors Proving Grounds and now reported to Assistant Chief Engineer Bill Collins, the same man who had co-created the original GTO with DeLorean a decade earlier. Adams did not work alone. Russ Gee, the Assistant Chief Engineer, came up with the core idea. His case was simple. If Pontiac could build the first high-performance engine that actually ran on low-lead fuel at 8.4-to-1 compression, it would keep the Trans Am from becoming nothing but a stripe and decal package on a weak sedan. Tom Nell handled the bottom end of the engine, working in a dry sump oiling system idea from Pontiac's 366 cubic inch NASCAR program. Jeff Young, who held a master's degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Combustion Engineering, designed the cylinder heads and connecting rods from scratch using stress coat and strain gauge testing because computer-aided design did not exist yet. Skip McCulley ran the day-to-day build testing, but the engineering was only half the problem, not even close. The cover story that shielded the whole program was a paperwork trick. Adams showed the engine at Pontiac's June 1972 long lead press preview not as a new engine, but as a performance version of the existing 455 family. That label meant it could be filed for Environmental Protection Agency approval under the same umbrella as the standard 455 Smog cert. No extra filing, no red flag at General Motors corporate, no review by the 14th floor. That single paperwork move is the only reason the Super Duty 455 ever reached a dealer showroom. For a while, the paperwork held up and the engine program looked safe. That did not last. On the outside, the Super Duty 455 looked like any other Pontiac big block sitting in a Firebird engine bay. On the inside, almost nothing was shared with the grocery getter Bonneville. 455 it claimed to be a version of. The cast iron block used a one-off casting with beefed-up webbing in the lifter valley, thicker main-bearing walls, and 4-bolt main caps on all 5 journals. It was the only production Pontiac V8 ever built with 4-bolt mains across the board. The connecting rods were forged from 5140 steel with 7/16" bolts, shot-peened and magnafluxed, the first forged connecting rods in a Pontiac V8 in 11 years. The pistons were forged TRW aluminum. The crankshaft was a nitrided nodular iron unit, not the forged steel piece that countless fan sites still claim today. Car and Driver noted the cast crank in their original 1973 test, but the forged crank myth has taken on a life of its own in the 5 decades since. Think about that for a second. An engine so famous that even its own fan base gets the specs wrong. The cylinder heads were the real prize. Casting number 16, they used round exhaust ports instead of the standard D ports found on every other Pontiac V8. The intake valves measured 2.11 inches, the exhausts 1.77. The intake ports were opened up so wide that Jeff Young had to press thin-wall steel sleeves through the pushrod holes because the port work had broken clean through the casting wall. Flow testing shows those heads moved up to 245 cubic feet per minute at 550 thousandths of an inch of lift. They were really just evolved Ram Air 4, heads breathing through 60 more cubic inches of displacement below them. If that sounds like a race engine wearing a street-legal disguise, that is exactly what it was. And the camshaft story proves it. The original engine spec used a camshaft stamped with the letter K, part number 480737. It was a 308-degree intake, 320-degree exhaust grind, with 470 thousandths of an inch of valve lift. That profile was an exact match for the famous Ram Air 4 cam that Mac McKellar had designed for the 1969 and 1970 model year. With the K-cam in place, along with a Rochester Quadrajet 800 cubic feet per minute carburetor, an aluminum high-rise intake manifold, and a working shaker hood scoop, the engine put out 310 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. Every press car that magazine testers drove in late 1972 and early 1973 had this exact setup under the hood. That K-cam spec would come back to haunt the whole Super Duty program, but that is getting ahead of the story. In late 1972, the Environmental Protection Agency caught Pontiac using a smog defeat device that shut off the exhaust gas recirculation system on all 1973 Pontiac V8s under certain driving conditions. It was not just the Super Duty. Every Pontiac V8 had to be retested by mid-March of 1973. The Super Duty with the K-cam cleared the federal standard outright, but it failed General Motors' own internal smog standard, which was set tighter than the government's on purpose to build in a safety margin. General Motors did not want to barely pass. They wanted room. With 600 customer orders on the books and no time to build a clean-running performance cam from scratch, Pontiac yanked the K-grind and swapped in part number 493323, stamped Y. It was a softer 301-degree intake, 313-degree exhaust cam, with just 407 thousandths of an inch of lift, pulled from the old Ram Air 3 profile. The official horsepower rating was changed on November 3rd, 1972, down to 290, at 4,000 revolutions per minute, and 395 pound-feet of torque at 3,200 revolutions per minute. And somehow, it gets worse for anyone who thought they were getting the engine the magazines tested. Every single production Super Duty 455 shipped with the Y-cam. Rocky Rotella, the top expert on this engine, has spent 3 decades digging through production records and engine stamps. He has never found a confirmed production car that left the factory with the K-cam in it. The press cars that ran 13 second quarter miles had an engine spec that no paying customer ever got. So, was the 290 horsepower rating honest? The proof says it was close to true for the production cam, and lowballed on purpose when it came to what the engine could really do. A bone stock production Super Duty 455 tested on a chassis dyno and written up in high-performance Pontiac magazine made 253 horsepower at the rear wheels. Factor in a standard 15 to 18% drivetrain loss through the transmission and rear axle, and you land at roughly 300 to 310 at the crank. A hair above the factory number, but close enough to call honest. Now put the K-cam back in. Restored cars rebuilt to the original K-cam spec put out between 370 and 400 horsepower on modern dynos as a matter of routine. One rebuild by Restore a Muscle Car hit 404. Skip McCulley, the build engineer, summed up the production cutbacks years later. compression, camshaft, jetting, and vacuum advance. Put back what the Smog rules took out, and you are looking at a 10.25 to 1 engine with the Ram Air 4 cam and richer fueling, well over 350 horsepower net. The 290 rating was lowballed on purpose, and here is why. The Superduty 455 was the highest-rated V8 sold in America in both 1973 and 1974. The Corvette's LS4 454 made 275. The best Camaro Z 28350 made 250. The Ford 351 Cobra Jet made 246. In that starved field, 290 was already the ceiling. Pushing any higher would have drawn the eye of every insurance company and smog watchdog in the country, and the engine would have been axed before the second model year. That white press car at Orange County International Raceway was tested by Car and Driver on February 7, 1973. It weighed 3,854 pounds with an automatic transmission and 3.42 rear gears. It covered the quarter mile in 13.75 seconds at 103.56 miles per hour. 0 to 60 took 5.4 seconds. Top speed hit 132. Hot Rod Magazine tested the same car and clocked 13.54 seconds at over 104 miles per hour. That became the number everyone remembers. But the version of that story that gets told is not the whole picture. Those press cars had the hotter K-cam that no buyer ever got. Cars that came off the dealer lot with the Y-cam, 3.08 gears, and factory air conditioning ran in the mid-14s to flat 15 seconds. Still fast enough to crush everything else on the road that year. For a sense of scale, a 1973 Mustang Mach 1 with the 351 Cobra Jet needed over 16 seconds to run the same quarter mile. If you are finding this interesting, hit subscribe. I cover the real engineering stories behind America's rarest muscle cars every week. By early 1973, the engine was approved and the parts were sitting in Pontiac's warehouse. The only question left was whether the cars would actually get built. The Superduty 455 was first planned for the Trans Am, the Formula Firebird, the Grand Am, the Grand Prix, the GTO, and the Le Mans. Martin Caserio, who took over as Pontiac general manager in late 1972, cut the list down to the Firebird only. He was the first Pontiac general manager in more than a decade who cared more about mainstream sales than performance, and the idea of a factory race engine in a street car made him deeply uneasy. That is the kind of number that makes accountants cry 50 years later. In 1973, 252 Trans Ams got the Superduty engine along with 43 Formula Firebirds. Exactly one 1973 Grand Am was built with the engine, a cameo white show car pool unit on record with Pontiac Historical Services, and confirmed as one of the most unusual muscle cars in existence. In 1974, 943 Trans Ams and 58 Formulas got the engine before production ended for good. Total output across both model years and all body styles comes to 1,297 factory-built Superduty engines. The option code was LS2, and it added roughly $521 to $550 to a Trans Am that cost between $4,500 and $5,600 loaded. The 1973 Trans Am came in only 3 colors: Cameo White, Buccaneer Red, and the one-year-only Brewster Green. About 146 Brewster Green Trans Ams were built that year across all engine choices. Only about 7 of those got the Superduty. 2 Brewster Green Trans Ams were wrecked on camera filming John Wayne's 1974 police movie, McHugh. A Brewster Green Superduty 4-speed is the single rarest street setup in the whole 2-year production run. And if one shows up at auction, it brings whatever a dead-set collector is willing to pay. The showdown that almost ended the program took place at Herb Adams's last staff meeting inside the Pontiac Engineering Building in the spring of 1973. Caserio had been trying to find out who had actually greenlit the Superduty engine. He found 600 sets of Superduty parts sitting in storage and 600 matching customer orders that dealers had already sent in. Adams, who had already handed in his notice, gave a straight answer. If we have 600 orders and 600 sets of parts, why don't you build them to sell them? So yeah, not exactly a warm goodbye to the man who had kept Pontiac's performance name alive. Caserio let the engine go to production in May of 1973. The first Superduty Firebirds rolled off the line in early June. Adams was pushed out because his racing side gig had gotten too hard to hide. He had been running race cars under the name Adams Associates. starting with a 1964 Tempest called the Gray Ghost in the Sports Car Club of America Trans Am Series, then a 1972 Firebird, and then a Grand Am entered in NASCAR Cup events. At the Daytona International Speedway in 1973, Adams found out that Pontiac's own public relations chief had called NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. in person to ask that his Grand Am be kept out of the Daytona 500. Adams quit the day he got back to Pontiac. Tom Nell left the division soon after. Jeff Young was banned from all high-performance work and moved to production smog testing. He left Pontiac for good in 1976. The Special Projects Group was shut down at the end of 1972. Every engineer who built the Super Duty 455 was either fired, moved, or pushed out within 2 years of the first car reaching a buyer. The name Super Duty was not made up for the 1973 engine. It carried a heritage. Pontiac first used the Super Duty name on a 421 cubic inch V8 built for NASCAR and National Hot Rod Association, racing between 1961 and January of 1963. The original 421 Super Duty was factory rated at 405 horsepower, but an internal Chevrolet memo from engineer Vince Piggins to Corvette chief Zora Arkus-Duntov put the real output at 468 horsepower at 5,800 revolutions per minute and 500 pound-feet of torque. Mickey Thompson built one. Hayden Proffitt drove one to a 12.55-second run at 110 miles per hour at the 1961 National Hot Rod Association Nationals, the first 12-second stock car in organized drag racing history. Arnie Beswick, the Illinois farmer turned drag racer known as The Farmer, raced 3 of them, including the passionate Pancho Catalina, that became one of the most famous Pontiac race cars ever built. Pontiac won the 1962 NASCAR Manufacturers Championship, taking 22 of 53 races that season, including Fireball Roberts winning the Daytona 500. That control of the sport was about to flip completely. General Motors' company-wide racing ban in January 1963 ended the program in one announcement. Parts stockpiles were ordered destroyed. Only 267 of the original Super Duty 421 engines were ever built across the 1962 and 63 model years. When Adams, Nell, and Young picked the name Super Duty for the 1973 engine, it was a clear signal to anyone who remembered what Pontiac had once been. The technical heritage was just as direct. The 303 cubic inch Trans Am road racing engine and the 366 NASCAR engine both fed their cylinder head design and beefed up block layout straight into the Super Duty 455. The Super Duty Trans Am is one of the fastest rising American muscle cars in the collector market today, and the auction numbers from the last 2 years prove it. At Mecum, Indianapolis in May of 2024, a 1973 Trans Am Super Duty sold for about $260,000, the current United States auction record for the model. At Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale in January of 2025, an original 1973 automatic brought $183,700. At Mecum, Kissimmee that same month, a 1974 four-speed with 90,000 miles on the clock sold for $203,500. Hagerty's price guide right now values a 1973 Trans Am Super Duty at roughly $112,000 in number 3, good shape, and $140,000 or more for show-level cars. For a sense of scale, a base 1974 Trans Am without the Super Duty option tops out around $62,500. The Super Duty engine option alone roughly doubles the value of the car 50 years after it rolled off the line. Car and Driver called it the car that could not happen, and looking at the proof, they were right. Every force in Detroit pointed against this engine. Smog rules, insurance penalties, a direct order from General Motors' own president demanding lower compression ratios, a new general manager at Pontiac who tried to shut the whole thing down and only gave in because the parts were already cast and the orders were already on dealer books. 5 engineers in a shop that was not supposed to exist built it anyway. They filed it as a version of a family sedan engine to dodge a separate Environmental Protection Agency review. They forged the connecting rods from race-grade steel. They shaped cylinder heads so big the portwork broke through the casting walls. And then every one of them was gone from the company within 24 months of the first car reaching a buyer. Pontiac sold 1,286 Firebirds in all of 1972. By 1974, they moved over 10,000 Trans Ams. The $55 Screaming Chicken Hood decal did more for those sales numbers than the $521 Super Duty option ever did. The engine that saved the Trans Am's good name was never properly pushed by the company that built it. 290 horsepower. That was the number on the window sticker. The engineers who built it knew it was low. The magazine testers who drove the press cars knew the street version was tamer. And today, a car that's stickered for under $6,000 sells for $250,000 at auction, exactly because of the gap between what Pontiac was allowed to say and what the engine really was. The car that could not happen, still here, still climbing. If you want to see another engine Detroit tried to bury, that video is on screen now.